It was 10 years ago that 3-year-old Madeleine McCann disappeared from her parents' holiday apartment in Portugal. Since then, an incredible £12 million of taxpayers' money and thousands of police man-hours have been spent in the hunt to find this little lost girl. A decade on, we still know nothing of her fate. We have no more idea of what happened to Madeleine now than we did then. It's like time has stood still. So as harsh as it sounds, is it time to say enough is enough? Every possible thing has been done to find Madeleine, but it isn't fair to keep throwing money at this search when the parents of hundreds of other missing children remain devastated. Not just at the loss of their child, but at the fact that to them, it seems the loss of their precious babies just isn't worth the time, the resources or the manpower as the loss of Madeleine McCann. Trouble is, Madeleine's disappearance has become a political issue. No PM, no government minister wants to be the one to pull the plug. Well, as sad as it is, and for the sake of all those other little mites who've just gone missing, we have to.
I mean, Carole, I think you're right in many ways, because I think the search for Madeleine McCann has become a national story. It's gone on and on and on, and I think it's because many of us can identify, you know, they went off, 2 white doctors from Leicestershire, went to Praia da Luz in Portugal for a, tapas and beach holiday with their kids, and terrible thing happened. And we all identify it. It's incredibly relatable, and probably a disproportionate amount of money has been spent on this one child. But it's not a completely cold case, and I think that some of the documentaries that came out this week to mark the 10-year anniversary showed that you can understand why the parents don't want to give up hope, because not even the police have given up hope.
Absolutely.
There's a clip. Can we just watch the clip from the Sky documentary from a copper who says that there is a lead?
The Portuguese and Metropolitan Police both admit their relationship has sometimes been fraught, but they now say they're working closely together.
I know we have a significant line of inquiry which is worth pursuing, and because it's worth pursuing, it could provide an answer, but until we've gone through it, I won't know whether we're going to get there or not.
What area is that focusing on?
We've got a significant line of inquiry. We can fish around this as much as you want. Ourselves and the Portuguese are doing a critical piece of work, and we don't want to spoil it by putting tidbits of information out publicly.
I completely get the fact that Madeleine's parents never want to give up the search for their little girl. I get the fact that any parent of any missing child never wants to give up the search, because you can't see your own child's life in terms of cost effectiveness. It's impossible. However, the fact of the matter is that this amount of money has to be spent. He says there's a lead. Let's listen to what former Detective Chief Inspector Colin Sutton said. He wasn't part of the Madeleine inquiry, but he was part of the film that Sky put out the other night, Searching for Madeleine.
There's no firm evidence to explain what happened. There's no happy ending, no tragic ending. There's no ending at all. If you were in charge today, what would you be doing? What more could you be doing?
Here and now, where we are now, I would be saying we need to start this again from the beginning and look at absolutely everything. Because unless that's done, I fear the Scotland Yard investigation will just peter out and we may never know.
So are you saying that the past 6 years, £12 million has all been a waste?
I suppose I am.
It's a pretty unstable thing to say, but 10 years down the line, do we seriously think she's going to be found now?
My concern is this. The first police officer from who you heard, Assistant Commissioner Mark Rowley, who is the national lead on counter-terrorism.
Yes.
So why is he involved in the Madeleine McCann case? We still have officers today working on this case. What do they do? Are we not allowed, with the level of expenditure, 11 or 12 million pounds, and of course I don't expect the person's name, but are we not allowed just the faintest scintilla of what it is the police is looking at? I think you're right in your introduction, and actually you're both right. Good Lord, if it was one of my children or grandchildren, there's not enough money on earth. I would mortgage the house, I don't care. But with the cuts that we know there are, unless there is a tangible lead, And given the fact that I think the average cost we have in our briefing notes that normally they expend somewhere in the region of about £1,500, £2,000. This is an extraordinary amount of money. I do think it is a political situation. I think we have a right to know the magnitude of this lead, and then that should force a decision.
It's not even saying it's not worth it. It's just... What is it they're looking for? Nick's right. We have a right to know what they're looking for, especially at a time. You know, just 2 years ago, the Police Federation wanted to call a halt because of the spike in murders in London, because of the spike in terrorism. They wanted to be able to spend the money on that. So, you know, I get that. But 10 years on, a really strong lead. If it's that strong, why weren't they looking at it 2 years ago?
But if it's
and how has it come up?
If the police are telling us they've got a really strong lead, they're not going to tell us. The politicians should say to the police, it's your decision. It's not going to be... But, you know, reality, that's quite difficult. But I agree with you. In the end, that's what they should say. The politicians should say to the police, look, if this is not worth spending, let's not spend it.
I feel like we're conflating a few different things here. Because you said in your intro, Carole, that it's unfair to the parents of other missing children. But are you saying that the money that's being spent on the Madeleine McCann investigation should be spent on investigating other missing children? Or are you saying it should just go into the police pot generally?
Well, I think there's about £100 million is spent on missing children
because,
every year.
Because if there's not enough money spent...
It's an inordinate amount spent on one child.
But if there's not enough spent... Because I completely agree that it's not fair to focus all this resource on Madeleine McCann, absolutely tragic though her story is, when there are so many other missing children. But at the same time, I think if we're not spending enough money and police time on missing children, that's a separate thing that we should be talking about. And it's not a question then of kind of Madeleine McCann and other children being mutually exclusive. We should prioritise missing children, if that's what you're saying. I think I might agree. And also, just to add to that, you know, it is true that it's shocking how often children go missing in this country. But at the same time, the number of very young children, like Madeleine McCann, aged around 3, that go missing is infinitesimally small. It's very, very rare. And so I think that's one reason why this case has really gripped me. But it's just such a mystery. She was so young. There are so many unanswered questions. So I can understand why people are still interested in it. And then there's a separate issue of how the investigation was conducted, which, you know, I mean, I thought Martin Brunt's documentary, The Sky one, we just saw clips from, really kind of revealed to me in a way I hadn't appreciated how completely flawed the investigation was. And the glare, you know, the fact that no DNA was taken and they rented out the apartment to other families.
2 families before they actually sealed it off.
There's no substitute for those initial hours and days of investigating. But if we're saying that there's no chance after 10 years of getting a new lead and it should be shut down for that reason, that's a separate thing. But I think it's important to be clear about the reason why we think it shouldn't be investigated. Is it because it's hopeless now? Some children do get found 10 years later.
Yeah, but you know what? But the interesting fact is the stats show that the ones that do get found after a long period of time, it's by happenstance. It's not actually by police work.
They
it's
just
actually
turn up.
There was one in South Africa where a girl was enrolled in a school and people were staggered by how similar she was to this other girl in the class. And it turned out that this was the baby that had been stolen from the mother in the hospital when she was born. So that's how kids missing for a long time are eventually found.
It would be so good if she...
It would be fantastic.
Anyway, it's time to...
Let's all hope she does.
And let's hope so.
Absolutely.
Whether the police carry on or not.
Yeah.